Hello everyone and welcome to this week's engineer interview with Chris. My name is Scott and I'm your host for today. Before we start, I would just like to start by saying thank you very much for signing up to this year's competition. For those of you who don't know, this is the Leaders Award competition, where we ask the question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? Pupils from the ages of 3 to 19 anywhere in the UK can join, and every single person who takes part receives a named and goodie certificate from a real life engineer. The deadline for submissions is March 22nd this year, so make sure that once you've finished the competition in class, you send your entries to us. Now, during these interviews, we're going to be speaking with engineers who work on loads of different projects, all of them showing the wonderful, interesting and exciting things that happen when you work in engineering. Now, our special guest is going to start by telling us a little bit about himself and how he got to where he is today, and then we're going to open up to the audience for questions. But that's enough for me. I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who's going to begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I did disappear off the call for a second. Can you see and hear me now?
Yep, we can see and hear you.
Excellent. Hopefully, if I do disappear, I will come back on as quickly as I can. Well, welcome everybody. Lovely to meet you all. Even though I don't have the pleasure of seeing you face to face, it's great to be here from me. And this is Betty over on my column. We can tell you a bit more about her later. But my name's Chris Van Der Kuyl. I'm the founder and chairman of 4J Studios. We're a games development company based up in Dundee. And some of you may know that we are probably best known for being the developer of Minecraft console editions. So from about 2011, we started working on Minecraft and did all the versions from Xbox to PlayStation to Nintendo. More recently, we've done lots and lots of different content for Minecraft, all the mashups, all the rest of it, the Switch mashup with Mario, everything. So we have two games development studios up here in Dundee and outside Edinburgh in a place called East Linton, where we have lots of artists and animators and coders and game designers working on the next generation of games, including one that launches today. We launched it on Switch last year, but on all other formats it comes out. My little plug of the day is Manic Mechanics, so you can go and have a look at that online when you get off this call. I'm sure when you go home from school today. But I started off life as a school kid in Dundee. I really had no, computer games were just appearing when I was a kid. People would only be able to play them really for the first time at home and out the arcade. This is way back in history in the 1980s. And I was lucky enough to be one of the first kids where my school got computers. Believe it or believe it not. Schools did not have computers when I first went to school. Then they did, and we all started to learn to program and have fun doing that. And when I left school, I loved it so much that I wanted to go and study computer science at university. That was something I really loved. But I also liked creating. I loved playing music and telling stories with my friends through, with video and things like that. So it was inevitable for me, and I loved games, that I'd probably try and come back to that. And some people I knew, a bit older than me, I had created a games company in Dundee at the time, a company called DMA, which its first big massive game was a game called Lemmings, which is over 30 years old now, Lemmings. But Lemmings, was so successful for them, they went and developed other games and eventually developed a game which none of you have been allowed to play yet because it's for adults. It's a game called Grand Theft Auto or GTA, but it became one of the biggest games in the world. So that kind of led us to think, wow, if these guys can do it and we've got the same skills as they do, maybe we can too. So about 25 years ago, I'm that old, long before you were born, I started a games company. And it was just me and a few of my friends started to make games and see what we could do. And over the years, we became more successful and we just found that we loved it. It was something that we worked really hard. It was a great profession to be in, but it was also something we just enjoyed so much, and we've stayed in it ever since. And we've also been lucky enough along the way to work with lots of schools and then universities to help bring to the world some of the first ever qualifications in games engineering, games design, games art. And the university in Dundee, one of the universities, Aberdeen University, is now kind of world famous for that. So we have this incredible thing up in Dundee where there's more people as a percentage of the whole population of Dundee. There's a higher percentage of people here work on computer games development than anywhere else in the world. So it's fun. I mean, I'm sure you probably did know it was a career and you've heard about it, but it's become massive. It's the world's biggest entertainment industry. We're bigger than film, television, theatre, and music combined. Games is, you all know that, but your parents and people in your family probably think it's just that funny kind of little thing, people play computer games in their spare time. Well, everyone, to some extent, is touched by the computer games industry. It's become massive, and even beyond games development, publishing, which is what we do, there are people who've made fantastic careers as content creators, playing video games professionally, as esports players. So there's many, many parts of the industry. It's such a huge industry. There's lots and lots of different careers. So it's a fun place to be. So, what more can I ask? I get to come to work and meet people like Betty, and I bring my Steam Deck in. So when I'm not in meetings, I'm playing games, and I've got to. It's brilliant. Imagine being able to say that. I'm sorry, I'm too busy playing games to come speak to anybody at the moment, and it's too important because it's my job. That's something a lot of us get to say quite a lot. And it is hard work. It's not all sitting enjoying games. Sometimes it can be a really challenging place to be as well, because it's really tough to create a new idea and bring it to life as a fully finished game. It's quite a tough thing to do, but it's pretty rewarding. And I think everyone that works with me in the studio would probably say they're here first and foremost because they love the industry and they love making games and they love playing games and talking about games. So what better place is there to be in the world? So there you go. Scott, I'll leave it there. That's my little introduction. But I'm more than happy now to spend time. Any questions you've got, more importantly, any question that anybody else is out there and wants to put into the chat, if we've got time, we'll try and answer them.
Brilliant. Well, Chris, first of all, thank you so much for that. It's so interesting to hear not only what you do now, but how you've got to where you are. And as you say, we're going to open up to the audience for questions. So anybody out there, please type your questions in the chat and we'll hopefully get a chance to ask them. But I've got the first question, and that is, what do you love most about your job?
I love working with a great team to create something that's never been seen before. That's the best. That's the most fun part, when we sit with a blank piece of paper and think, we can make anything, what are we going to make? And then the journey that you go on there is brilliant. And if I had one complaint about my job being the chairman, is I oftentimes don't get enough time to do that. I get pulled away in business things, and talking to you guys is a pleasure, don't get me wrong, but I'm the one that gets sent out to go and meet people and be nice to people and develop a business. Whereas I suppose sometimes I'd like to be making games more.
Well, one of the things you mentioned, we've had a few questions about this, is that you sort of had a love for it and with your friends when you were young, and then you actually started the business with your friends. We had a lot of questions about this. When you're developing a game, do you work in a team a lot, or is it something that you sort of go off on your own and come back with a lot of ideas?
It's almost always a team. I mean, we do things and you see them. Anyone can go and join these. They're out there. There's things called game jams, which you'll find that they're sometimes aimed at kids, sometimes aimed at professionals, sometimes aimed at people sometimes aimed at just anybody who wants to do it. And it's kind of what it sounds like. Normally, a limited period of time, maybe a day or 2 or 3 days, where people get together and try and come up with and see what they can come up with in a really short period of time. So we do that in the company. We give the people time to go, hey, let's come up with new ideas. Even if you're on one team, why don't you go and try and create a different team just to see what comes out of it? But often that happens a lot of the time, but then there's no fixed way to do it. Sometimes somebody will just have been thinking about an idea that's really their passion, and they'll come in one day and say, this I think is a brilliant idea. Who wants to try and make the game with me? Or even in the case of Minecraft, quite famously, the guy that founded Mojang, the developer up in Sweden, is a guy called Marcus Persson. He's commonly known, he's otherwise known as Notch. And Notch developed the first version, the early version of Minecraft, all by himself. So that's possible as well. I suppose the short answer is there's no one way to do it. Sometimes it's massive teams of hundreds of people. Sometimes it's one person. But most often, it's a small group of people who get together. And
it sounds like as well, like you said, that if it's so many ideas, and obviously the scale of games will change, how big and small will take it. But we do have quite a lot of questions around how long it takes to develop a game, because I only ever see them when they're finished. So how long from start to finish? You love making that idea from scratch. How does it become a full thing?
It's a great question, because again, there's such a variety of games out there. There literally are games that can be made in a day, and people have done it. Just here's a really simple idea. But if you take what we would in the industry call AAA games, which are the games with really high production values and hundreds of people on them, if not sometimes thousands of people, they can take years. Well, I mean, sometimes 5 years, 6 years. But then there's been a new category that's appeared, and Minecraft's a good example of this. It's a game that's never finished. You're always adding things to it, changing it. So we've literally had people that joined us in 2011-12, and until for 10 years, till 2022, they never worked on anything else in their life other than their professional life. 10 years into their career, they'd worked on one game. And that's brilliant, but also it's like, wow, is that what you do? You just work on one game for the rest of your life. But some people love that. Some people would rather move to different things all the time. But the very short answer is there's no fixed time. It can sometimes be really quick, and it can sometimes take forever, and it can sometimes have a small number of people, sometimes an enormous amount of people. And interestingly, just because it's got lots of money, time, and people on it, doesn't mean it's better than a game that's been developed by one or two people. It's just different.
We've got a few questions in about yourself, Chris, and perhaps what you were like in school and what people can be like now. But when you were in school, what were your favourite subjects that you liked to work on, and did any of that help you further down the line?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose as I sort of trailed in the early bit, I loved computer studies at school. It was a really new subject, so it was really, really exciting. It was one of my favourite things. I did quite enjoy maths, but also, like a lot of people, I wasn't somebody who's going to go and win a maths Olympiad. It wasn't something I just loved so much. All I ever wanted to do was maths, but I did kind of enjoy it. But I've realised as time's gone on, the huge benefit from making sure that I did do maths as much as I could. But I like creative stuff as well, so I really also enjoyed English and English and music. In some ways, I would have, if I could go back now, I would have kept doing art for longer. I stopped doing art before GCSE National 5. I stopped it after a couple of years in high school because I thought maybe I'm not that good at it. I realise now, just because I didn't work hard enough at it and develop my skills, and it would be, art and animation is such an important part of what we do.
Yeah.
I often think, it would be good to be better at that. I quite like it.
And obviously you talked about computing and the other things you like, but we've got a question here from Chelsea Pitum, and Chelsea asks, what qualifications were needed to get the job you have? But I have a feeling your job's kind of changed since then.
Yeah, well, my job, I laugh at people. I often say it's a bit of a joke. I had to set my own company up because I was unemployable. But I did have my qualifications were I've got a degree in computer science, and I was qualified to be a programmer, any kind of programmer. And I started off thinking, well, do I want a job? And I realised I didn't really want a job in a normal company. It's just the way I am. And at the time I did that, not many people thought the way I did that they could be an entrepreneur and set their own company up. Certainly not in Scotland or in Britain. So I just started off taking small contracts on. People would give me a job to do, and I'd go and write a bit of software. I'd go and then I'd do a bigger bit of software, and then I had enough work where I could employ 2 or 3 people to come and work with me. And before I knew it, we were off and running. But the interesting thing is, and I'd say this to anybody, always ask yourself, even though you've trained at something and you've decided that's what you're going to do you really enjoy it? Because we were waking up maybe 3 or 4 years into our business and saying, all this sort of work, what we've called just people hiring us to work and write programs. Most of the programs we're writing are really boring and we're not really interested in them. And we're getting a bit fed up of doing it. What do we really want to do? And we concluded, we thought, we really want to make games. So it was almost at that time, we didn't have all the qualifications and all the people to make games. We just decided this is what we want to do. And then we went and got those people and qualified ourselves, learned the things we didn't know. And that's probably been my life ever since. always trying to learn what I need to know next. So a lot of what I do today, you sort of alluded to it, Scott, it's got nothing to do. I didn't study business at school. I didn't do economics. I didn't do it at university. Most of my time on a daily basis is spent with business things and thinking about that. And I've just learned it as I've gone. And it's something I'd say to people, don't be saddened by what I'm going to say, but you'll never stop learning. And hopefully you'll be excited by that. There's always room to develop new skills. And sometimes you'll go, oh, I've been studying all this stuff, and actually that's not what I really want to do. I want to do something different. That's fine. You'll find a way to go and do the thing. It's more important, I think, that you really enjoy what you do, because you'll be way better at it, because you'll get up every day and want to learn, want to do better, rather than, oh, I've got a qualification that says this is the job I have to do, but I really hate my job. You don't want to be there.
Yeah, and I think it comes across that you are still very passionate about games, and we've got quite a lot of questions coming in now about actually making games. Now, this question comes from the Year 9 in TIFFs, and they want to know, what were the challenges of changing PC Minecraft to console Minecraft?
Oh, this is a great question, and I could talk about this one all day. You've asked me a question I love to answer. It's a huge challenge. So when Mojang came to us with the PC version, which was sometimes called Java Edition, and they wrote it in a programming language called Java. That was never going to work on the Xbox. The first one we did, it had to be changed to C++ and to be, which is another programming language that's used on games consoles. And so the technical challenge was enormous, but actually so was the gameplay challenge. The game played on a keyboard and a mouse, and way back then you used to have to keep a Minecraft wiki page open to learn what the crafting recipes were, and all that kind of stuff. You couldn't do that on console. So and you're playing on a gamepad. You had a totally different crafting system. It had to feel different. So there were so many challenges that we had to overcome, and that's what 4J Studios has always shown itself to be brilliant at, thinking about how can we technically deliver something that other people don't think is possible or is really difficult. And then from a gameplay point of view, how to make the game feel great on whatever that format is. So it was, it was a real privilege to do it, and it was a pleasure to do it. But it's something that was a lot more difficult than people would assume it is, because they look at Minecraft and think, hey, it's cool graphics, but it looks quite simple, and it's anything but simple.
We've actually got, because you mentioned take it from Java to C++, I think, and we asked the question in that. This one's from Joe Miles, and Joe asks, what software engine / language do you use to make your games? Is it one, or do you have to work across multiple?
It's definitely multiple, and it's something, if anyone's thinking about computer science and computer studies is something they really want to do, you never want to be studying just one language. You have to study languages as they come along, but you need to be flexible to work in anything, because things change so quickly in the industry. So right now, we use C++ a lot. We also use a language called C#, which is quite a deeper technical language to write things like shaders, 3D graphic stuff. We even still use machine code and assembly language, which is the real kind of right down in the weeds of technology, right down to the chips themselves. And then, depending on what people are doing, sometimes there'll be a little bit of Java still for certain things, even languages like Python. So the kind of people we like working with are people that can, don't say, oh, I only do these 3 languages. It's like, oh, here's a new one. I can't wait to learn it.
Well, in fact, that's the interesting thing, is we had this question in that says, I want to code too. What should I start with? So you just said that when you want to work with people, you're looking to learn. So how would you start?
So I would say if you've not taken any steps towards coding or stuff, things like Scratch is a brilliant tool. If you go and it's free, it's on the web. It was MIT in the US that designed it, and it's a really straightforward language and framework for coding games for people who've never coded before. So Scratch is great. Minecraft itself, the whole way that Redstone works in Minecraft, it's a programming language in itself. So you can learn the basics doing that there. And then from there, there's a whole world of different places you can go. But certainly Minecraft and Scratch are 2 pretty good places to start.
All right, and I'm sure everybody out there's already started then, by the sounds of things. So we've got some questions about some of the other games you've worked on, actually, and this one comes from B Class, which is, what game are you most proud of?
Wow. Oh, do you know, we actually made a game over 20 years ago called Brave, and if you know that Pixar actually came out and made a movie called Brave,
Yeah,
which weirdly was about a little Scottish girl.
I remember.
And I mean, our game Brave came before Pixar's Brave, and it
Oh,
was about a little Native American character in a sort of so it was really weird that a Californian company made an animated movie about a Scottish girl, and a Scottish games developer made a game about a Native American, and we both called them Brave. And that game, if you ever are able to get hold of a copy of it and play it, it was on PlayStation 2 when it came out. I really love that. But it's difficult to then not say I'm incredibly proud of the association we've had with Minecraft console because it's been so successful. It's the most played game of all time. It's sold more copies than any other single game. That's been a bit of a privilege to be part of that story. So, proud of both of those in different ways.
and I think lots to be proud of as well. Also, I had no idea there was a game called Brave that came out before the film. That's I'll have to go and look it out. We've just had a question actually because you mentioned at the start about how some games never end, and Minecraft being one of them. So this question from Adcott School says, "How do you further develop Minecraft? How do you just have to come up and go, what can we do next, or what can we improve? How does that work?"
Well, there's a huge process that Mojang, who are still around, and Microsoft go through where they have lots of internal ideas. They've got this massive list of things that they could add to the game. But a lot of the time, and we think this is a great thing to do, is they ask the community. They say, "Hey, we've got new mobs that we're going to bring out, and we've got it down to a short list of, let's say, these two. Which one do you want? You guys vote for it. We'll do the one that you like." And when you get into a game like Minecraft, in the design side, you never run out of ideas. There's always too many ideas to do. And one of the things I think we have to do as game developers, wherever we work at, is make some really difficult choices about what not to do. Because sometimes it's easy to just shove every idea that you've ever had into something, and it's very difficult for people to understand that. Sometimes simple is best. You think about amazing games that's lasted for hundreds, if not thousands of years, like chess and drafts and stuff. They're really simple, yet you can spend a lifetime trying to master them. So sometimes we have to do something we call creative restriction, limit what we allow ourselves to do to try and be more creative with less things, which sounds weird, but is actually the right way to do it.
No, that sounds great. If you sort of set yourself boundaries and say, well, I can't do this, and this, how do we do it? Then you have to get creative to do it. That's fascinating. We do this question's coming a lot, and I know you showed your Steam Deck earlier, but do you spend a lot of time playing the games you create?
I spend it. I mean, like all of us, whether it's schoolwork or family or whatever, we've only got a certain amount of time we can play games. And in fact, not only that, and you might be surprised to hear me say this, but it's not good to do nothing in your spare time other than play games. I love getting on a bike. I love, I love swimming. I love skiing. I do all sorts of fun things that aren't playing games. And for all of us, it's really important that you don't just do one thing. I would say, and if your if your parents and your people around you are saying, "Oh, computer games are a waste of total nonsense. They're amazing," it would be like if all you did was read books. That wouldn't be good for you either. Reading books is great, but you have to kind of balance it. So in that balance in my life, I try to spend as much time as I can playing games. But being in the industry, there is not enough time in the world for me to play all the games I want to play. And our own games, I absolutely play them as much as I can. But sometimes it's difficult because if you've been in, right beside a game all the way through development, sometimes you can be sort of too good at it. Sometimes things that are meant to be a surprise and part of the story, them. All the spoilers, because you've been part of it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. You get to make the game and it's brilliant. You get to share it with people, but it's not as good an experience for you because you're not playing it for the first time, really ever. But I do play them, and we've got this one out today. We also have another game coming soon from a developer called Stormcloud Games that we're an investor in and we're part of, and I'm really excited. I've got to travel to America next week and I'm taking their game with me. and I'm going to be playing that on the plane on Monday.
Oh, brilliant. Well, so I think this is a question that was sent in to us, and it was about what the gaming industry is like in the UK, because I think to those who didn't know, like me especially, is think you just assume it all happens in the US, but you talked about seeing it grow in the UK, and as a Scottish person myself, Dundee as well, not like the big city. So can you tell us a little bit like what the gaming industry in the UK is like? Because there'll be a lot of people out here wanting to work in this industry.
It's absolutely massive. I mean, look, the two biggest entertainment, not just games, but of all entertainment, of everything in the world, the two biggest entertainment franchises in the world are not Marvel and Taylor Swift. They're Grand Theft Auto and Minecraft. And they're both, in some way, they've both been made in Scotland. And by the way, there's other parts of those, the Minecraft teams are in England, they're all over, but we have an incredibly strong games industry in the UK. We always have. And it looks, in a way, it looks quite different from other countries. Every country sort of has their own personality of the kind of games they'll make. Now, there's lots of different types of games made in the UK, but in general, if I was going to take a generalisation, I'd say our games are slightly quirkier and different, and in my view, we'll invent things and new ways to play games before others do. So, of course, in the US, there are massive games companies, but what you'll often find is like some versions of some of those massive games from the US will be made over here too. So there are loads of, and throughout the UK, I mean, Dundee is well known as a hub. Guildford in Surrey is a massive place to make games. Leamington Spa in the Midlands is a massive place for the games industry. So places you might not expect to be big for games. Teesside, Middlesbrough, great games companies there. They appear everywhere, not just like in film, everybody's in Hollywood or everybody's down near the big studios in London. Those places have big studios, but with the games industry, we're kind of everywhere.
So it's just because there's so much opportunity, and I know there'll be so many people inspired to want to work in the industry. So we've got time for a few more questions. If anyone's got any questions, please type them in the chat. This is a really good question, actually. Do you find yourself judging games from a work perspective when you play them, aka that could have been done this way, or I would have done that differently?
Yeah, you can't help yourself. If you're in a games professional, you always play people's games and going, oh, that's a shame, or I know what they've done there, and if only they'd done it a different way. But do you know what? Sometimes you play a game and it's so good, you just lose yourself in the game, and that probably tells you it's amazing. I've been playing a game recently which is appropriate for everyone, age-wise, and I would recommend people play it, called Cocoon. And Cocoon, it's like a puzzle game. You only ever use a joystick and a single button to play it, but it's beautiful. It's so well designed. I get quite inspired wow, the people behind this are really brilliant. They've thought of everything in this, and there's nothing. And when you get to that, nothing I would change in this game. You're playing a great game.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to check that out. So one of the things you must see is everything, and you work on all the new things, right? So the future of gaming, what's really exciting about it, do you think?
Oh wow, where do I start? I mean, the games industry in my lifetime, in my career, we kind of thought that's a fun thing to do, and then once the games industry, people get fed up of it and go and get a proper job, and then it just got bigger and bigger, and every time I thought it can't get any bigger than this, it has got bigger than that. So I think with the increase in power of computers, which there's a thing called Moore's law in computers. Every 18 months, the density of silicon, the power of silicon chips doubles, which never stopped. It's crazy. And now with AI technologies being useful and people starting to bring them in, we're talking about games which will be so big and deep you could play them for the rest of your life and never get bored with them. And we're seeing some brilliant technologies appear in mobile portable stuff. The current generation of consoles is amazing. I can't wait to see what Nintendo do next. It's just so broad. There's so many things that I want to see. And then if you look at augmented reality, things like Apple's Vision Pro, which is crazy expensive today, when that gets cheaper, and I wonder what games we're going to make with that. So there's a lot of amazing stuff to come.
So I know we're getting to the end, but there's two questions that have come in that I think are great. So I think we'll just finish on these two. The first one comes from Millie in Primary 3 at St Vincent's. Please, can you tell us about the figure beside you?
This is Betty. So Betty's the main character, or one of the main characters in our new game, Manic Mechanics. She is an amazing mechanic, and it's kind of like you go into a garage and you have to repair as many cars as possible in a short period of time in a sort of couch co-op. If you've ever played Overcooked or Moving Out or these kind of games, it's everybody around the TV or playing online with your friends, and it's multiplayer mayhem, and it's brilliant. So thank you for asking about Betty, and she says hello too.
and I think we'll end on this question, which comes from Rebecca Boyle, which is, what is the best advice you could give to an aspiring young coder?
The best advice I'd say is get out and code, make things, try things. Don't worry about breaking it. Don't worry if it's rubbish. I learned most of my early years from making mistakes and fixing them and then realizing what happened. Just get out and do it and try and make stuff.
Try and make stuff. I think that's excellent advice to end the session on. So I would just like to say thank you to everyone for joining us, but a special thank you to Chris for helping inspire all the engineers in the making out there, because everyone watching this, it is your turn to come up with your own engineering ideas. Remember and send them to us once you've finished so we can get our certificates sent out, and hopefully we'll see you all at our in-person exhibitions at the end of the school year. Remember, the deadline is March 22nd, so once you've got your ideas designed, get them sent to us. But a massive thank you to everyone, but a huge thank you to Chris. And remember, if you were an engineer, what would you do?